Senator, thank you so much again for joining me this evening. We just learned that President Biden will visit Israel, and I just wanted to get your reaction to that news and what you hope he will accomplish on that trip.
Well, this will be an absolutely extraordinary visit coming just days after these unconscionable terrorist attacks and at the very moment that Israel is contemplating its next steps. I think Joe Biden has shown the world why American leadership is still indispensable. And I think it's going to send an incredibly strong signal to Hamas, but to the other enemies of Israel and the United States when Joe Biden and Benjamin Netanyahu and his war cabinet are standing shoulder to shoulder in support of the Israeli people. I'm very glad to hear the news today of a plan for humanitarian aid to reach Gaza. That's absolutely critical. There does not have to be a choice made here between going after those who carried out these heinous crimes and making sure that families in Gaza, especially children in Gaza, are not unduly harmed. And again, a really exceptional moment, 7 hours of meetings with the Secretary of State and Israeli leaders, once again showing, how deeply committed the Biden administration is to helping Israel hold to account the people who committed these crimes, but getting it right.
Senator, there was also news today, and I'll just note, Hamas is not exactly a trusty source of information, but there was news that they would be potentially open to releasing foreign nationals, including American citizens, at the right time. Now, that, of course, does not include Israeli citizens. What do you make of that, and should that deal be accepted if that actually becomes a reality?
Well, listen, it's obviously really critical that these hostages be released immediately. And we are working, as you know, through the Qataris who do have a conduit to Hamas to try to get this release as soon as possible. I think we should be careful to accede to demands being placed on these hostages' release. Obviously, we want to get them back as quickly as possible. I think Hamas is coming to the realization that holding these hostages does them much more harm than good. And my hope is that they'll be out of harm's way soon.
It also gives them some leverage, and if they keep the Israelis, it's hard to imagine how they're going to get them back. A very difficult circumstance. I wanted to ask you about also the Department of Defense's announcement today about the deployment, or the asking members of the military to be prepared to deploy, I should say, to the Middle East. We're told if they are deployed, they would go to a nearby country to be prepared to support Israel in the war against Hamas. What do you think that support should look like? Are you comfortable with what you've seen announced? Are there more details you're looking for about the deployment?
So we have not received any briefing on what the nature of that deployment would be, but clearly we are contemplating transferring some significant defensive equipment to Israel. Much of that equipment needs U.S. support and backup, and we also have significant U.S. assets in the region. We have thousands of U.S. troops there, and as this conflict threatens to widen, it just makes sense for us to bring increased assets to bear in the region to send a signal to Iran and others that if they want to increase the scope of this conflict, that they are eventually going to come head to head with the United States. So in order to best support Israel, especially as we flow more lethal aid to them, there's going to need to be some American personnel to provide logistical support. But we also want to send that strong message of deterrence to Iran and to others in the region.
The White House wants Congress to pass an aid package to Israel. You want Congress to pass an aid package to Israel. And Senator Schumer has also called for humanitarian aid to Palestinians to be included. Do you think it should include specific assistance for Gaza, or how do you think that should be structured? It's obviously very difficult to deliver that, but they're in such dire need.
Well, this announcement likely makes the inclusion of aid more viable. There was obviously a question as to whether we were going to be able to get that aid in. Now we may be able to have a pathway to get aid into Gaza. The UN has already issued an appeal, and I'm pressing the administration and my colleagues to make sure the United States does its part to meet that appeal. Others will contribute funding as well. But certainly it makes sense to flow forward the weapons, the interceptors that Israel needs, along with the money necessary to deal with the humanitarian consequences of this war. That's how we approach conflict overseas. We put in the money necessary to fight the bad guys, but then we also put in the money to try to hold civilians as harmless as possible. And we should simply stay true to that historic strategy, that historic plan, as we help Israel go after Hamas inside Gaza.
You're very familiar, Senator, with the dynamics in the region. You've been working on these issues for so many years. I was asking my prior guests about Egypt and the Rafah crossing, because there's been so much conflicting information about what's happening there and why it's closed. What is your assessment of what's happening there? What needs to happen in order for the Rafah crossing to open? There's up to 600 Americans, of course, stuck in Gaza right now.
Yeah, I will say this is very frustrating. I understand Egypt's concern, which is that if the crossing is completely opened, you would have a massive flow of refugees into the Sinai, which Egypt can simply not handle. But there is a way to have a limited opening so that Americans can leave and supplies, humanitarian relief can come in. Egypt is a supposed ally of the United States. In fact, the only country that gets more military aid coming from taxpayers in the United States than Egypt is Israel. They're the second biggest recipient of U.S. military aid. And so it is frustrating that it has been so difficult to convince Egypt to open up that crossing for these limited purposes. My hope is that tomorrow you will see that crossing opened and you will see Americans coming out, humanitarian aid going in, and we are no longer going to have to be in a negotiation with Egypt over this.
I mean, Egypt is obviously a very important partner on the national security front of the United States. But as you mentioned, we give them so much, the United States gives them so much military aid. Should that be part of the discussion if they don't open up this border crossing?
Well, the idea of this military aid is that it binds Egypt to us. I have been a critic for years of the amount of military aid we give to Egypt, and the supporters of it say it's absolutely necessary in order to make sure that when the chips are down, when a crisis is in our midst, that Egypt will ally with us, will side with us. And right now we're having a really hard time getting Egypt to just do the basics of opening up that crossing. And so, of course, if this continues to be an issue, if we can't convince the Egyptians to let Americans out and let aid in, of course that is going to have consequences for our relationship with Egypt in the future.
And a reminder of the refugees have very few places to go, and that is also a big challenge. Senator Chris Murphy, thank you so much for joining me this evening. Really appreciate your time.